I will bring those articles of impeachment to the attention of the Congress of the United States of America before the Christmas break. The movement continues. This is not a moment in time. This is a movement for all time. And those who have the courage to stand for liberty and justice for all, you are a part of this movement. You may not know it, but you are. Those who believe that government of the people, by the people, for the people is a necessity in a democracy, you are a part of this movement. So let us not forget that if we are to maintain what has been given to us, we inherited this democracy. And if we are to maintain this democracy, we have to do more than say we believe in these things. We have to participate.
Okay, Trump is absolutely losing his mind right now after Congress just delivered a brand new impeachment threat that's directly tied to his insane comments about lawmakers deserving death. Texas Democrat Al Green has gone live again, and he's promising to file fresh articles of impeachment before Christmas. That's right, before Christmas. We're not talking about some distant threat that might happen someday. We're talking about a congressman standing in front of cameras saying we're in a countdown to impeachment and promising a vote before the holiday recess. And this time, the impeachment push is explicitly connected to Trump's unhinged attacks, where he accused Democratic lawmakers of seditious behavior punishable by death. Trump suggested elected members of Congress should be executed, and now Congress is responding with impeachment. Can you believe this is where we are? The president threatens to have legislators killed, and the response is, let's vote on removing him from office before we go home for the holidays. This is constitutional crisis territory, and Trump is reportedly in a complete rage spiral watching it unfold. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
That was Vice President J.D. Vance earlier today breaking the news of the D.C. shooting to soldiers at Fort Campbell. He was there to serve an early Thanksgiving meal to service members on the Army base, which happens to sit in a bright red congressional district in Tennessee, where a special congressional election is being held next Tuesday to replace Republican Congressman Mark Green, who retired in July. That district, the Tennessee 7th, voted for Trump just last year by 22 points. So this should be a breeze. And yet, check this out. New Emerson College survey shows Republican candidate Matt Van Epps leading Democrat Afton Bain by only 2% among likely voters. That is within the margin of error in a Trump plus 22 district. This comes a month after Republican losses at ballot boxes across the country.
Let me explain what's happening here, because this is moving fast and the stakes couldn't be higher. Representative Al Green, who has been one of the most consistent voices calling for Trump's impeachment throughout his presidency, announced in a media blitz over the past few days that he's filing new articles of impeachment as a privileged resolution. For people who don't know, a privileged resolution is a special procedural move that forces the House to actually vote on the matter. The Speaker can't just ignore it and let it die in committee. The House has to take it up and vote. So when Green says before Christmas, we will vote again on impeachment, he's not just making noise, he's using congressional rules to force the question onto the floor, whether Republican leadership wants it there or not. Every single member of the House is going to have to go on the record about whether they think a president can threaten Congress with execution and keep his job. The specific trigger for this new impeachment push is Trump's Truth Social post from November 20th, where he labeled a group of Democratic lawmakers as seditious and said their actions were punishable by death. These lawmakers had released a video reminding military service members about their legal duty to refuse illegal orders, which is basic military law that every service member is trained on, and Trump responded by essentially calling for their execution. Al Jazeera, NBC, DW, and other major outlets around the world are covering this as the American president suggesting execution for elected officials who told troops to reject illegal orders. That's how the international community is seeing this, as a president threatening to kill legislators for speech he didn't like. And Green is saying that crosses a bright constitutional line that demands an impeachment response. This isn't Green's first impeachment effort against Trump during his second term. He's already filed .res.415 and H.res 353 previous articles of impeachment that accuse Trump of authoritarian rule, violating due process, denigrating judges, ignoring Supreme Court orders, and endangering the separation of powers. These articles argue that Trump will remain a threat to democracy and the Constitution if allowed to remain in office, but this new push ties all of that together with the most explosive accusation yet, that Trump is using his presidential platform to menace another branch of government with death threats. The narrative Green is building is clear. Trump defies court orders, Trump attacks judges, Trump ignores the Supreme Court, and now Trump is suggesting members of Congress deserve to be executed. Each escalation makes the next one more dangerous, and at some point Green is arguing, Congress has to say enough is enough. Trump's reaction to this impeachment threat has reportedly been volcanic. He's raging on social media, he's attacking Green and other Democrats, he's claiming persecution and witch hunts and all the usual defenses. But here's the thing, his own words are the evidence this time. Nobody is alleging some complicated conspiracy or obscure legal violation. Trump publicly posted that lawmakers committed seditious acts punishable by death. Those are his words on his social media platform for everyone to see. There's no denying what he said. There's no spinning it as something else. The question is simply whether suggesting lawmakers should be executed crosses a line that justifies removal from office, and Green is forcing Congress to answer that question before they go home for Christmas. The political dynamics here are brutal for Republicans because if the House votes on impeachment, every Republican has to pick a side. Do they vote to impeach a president who suggested executing his critics? Or do they vote against impeachment and go on record saying that's acceptable behavior? There's no good option for Republicans in swing districts who need moderate voters but also can't afford to anger Trump's base. Trump has put his own party in an impossible position with his rhetoric, and now Green is making sure they can't avoid confronting it. So buckle up because we're about to dive into exactly what these impeachment articles contain, why Green is so confident about forcing a vote, how Trump is responding to this threat, and what this means for the constitutional showdown between the president and Congress. Let's break it down. All right, so let's get into the specifics of what Al Green is doing and why this impeachment push is different from previous efforts that went nowhere. Green has been filing impeachment articles against Trump throughout his second term, and each time Republicans have voted to table or dismiss them. But Green keeps coming back because he understands something important about the process. Every time he forces a vote, he creates a record. Every Republican who votes against impeachment goes on record defending whatever Trump did that triggered the articles. And when Trump's behavior keeps escalating, when he goes from attacking judges to defying court orders to suggesting lawmakers deserve death, that record becomes more and more damaging for Republicans who've been defending him. Green's strategy isn't necessarily to win an impeachment vote in a Republican-controlled House. He knows the math. He knows Republicans have the majority and will probably protect Trump, but he's forcing them to own that protection on the record, vote after vote, as Trump's behavior gets worse and worse. The privileged resolution mechanism Green is using is key to understanding why this matters. Normally, when someone introduces articles of impeachment, party leadership can just let them die in committee. They never get a floor vote. The public never sees how members would have voted, but a privileged resolution bypasses that. It forces the House to take up the matter and vote on it within a specific time frame. That's why Green can confidently say before Christmas, we will vote again on impeachment, because the rules require the House to deal with a privileged resolution. Republican leadership can't just bury it. They have to schedule a vote. They have to make their members go on record. And that vote happens whether Speaker Johnson wants it or not. Green has used this tactic before, and he's using it again now, because Trump's death penalty rhetoric has given him what he believes is the strongest possible case for forcing the question. Let's talk about what the impeachment articles actually say, because the accusations are serious and comprehensive. The previous articles, H-Res 353 and H.Res.415, accuse Trump of authoritarian rule. They cite his attacks on the judiciary, his defiance of court orders, his attempts to consolidate power in the executive branch beyond constitutional limits. They accuse him of violating due process by pushing policies that deny people their constitutional rights without proper legal procedures. They accuse him of denigrating judges and undermining public confidence in the judicial system whenever courts rule against him. They accuse him of ignoring Supreme Court orders, treating the highest court in the land as an obstacle to be worked around rather than an authority to be respected. And they argue that all of this together represents a fundamental threat to democracy and constitutional government. The articles explicitly state that Trump will remain a threat to democracy and the Constitution if allowed to remain in office. That's the core argument, that Trump's pattern of behavior shows he can't be trusted with presidential power and must be removed to protect the country. The new impeachment push adds the death penalty rhetoric to this existing framework. Green and his allies are arguing that when Trump publicly suggests members of Congress should be executed for disagreeing with him, that's not just another controversial statement. That's a president using his platform to menace another branch of government. That's the executive branch threatening the legislative branch with death. That's a fundamental attack on the separation of powers that goes beyond anything previous articles allege. They're framing this as the culmination of everything else Trump has done: the court defiance, the judge attacks, the authoritarian tendencies, reaching its logical conclusion in actual threats of violence against legislators. The argument is that you can't separate Trump's death penalty rhetoric from his pattern of defying legal constraints. He attacks courts because he doesn't think they should limit him. He ignores orders because he thinks presidential power is unlimited, and he threatens lawmakers with death because he thinks opposition to him should be punishable by the ultimate penalty. It's all connected, and the impeachment articles are trying to tell that complete story. The timing of this impeachment push before Christmas is deliberate and strategic. Green wants this vote to happen while Trump's death penalty comments are still fresh in everyone's minds. He wants members voting on impeachment while the public is still outraged about the president suggesting lawmakers deserve execution. And he wants Republicans going home for the holidays having to explain to constituents why they voted against impeaching a president who threatened to have his critics killed. The timing also creates maximum pressure and maximum attention. A pre-Christmas impeachment vote becomes a major news story during a slow holiday news period. It dominates coverage, it shapes the narrative heading into the new year, and it keeps the focus on Trump's dangerous rhetoric at exactly the moment when he'd probably prefer everyone forget about it and move on. Trump's response to this impeachment threat has been characteristically unhinged. He's attacking Green personally. He's calling the impeachment effort another witch hunt and hoax. He's claiming Democrats are trying to undo the election and overturn the will of the people. It's the same playbook he's used against every investigation and legal challenge he's ever faced. But there's a desperation to his responses this time that observers are noting, because Trump can't deny what he said. The posts are there, the words are his. When he suggested lawmakers committed sedition, punishable by death, he created a record that can't be spun away. He can attack the impeachment process all he wants, but he can't claim he didn't say what everyone can see he said, and that makes his usual defense strategies less effective than they've been in the past. The connection between this impeachment push and the Supreme Court's immunity ruling is important to understand. Earlier this year, the Supreme Court ruled that presidents have broad immunity from criminal prosecution for official acts. That decision made it much harder to hold Trump criminally accountable for things he does as president. Critics warned at the time that the ruling would make impeachment more important, not less, because if you can't prosecute a president criminally, then impeachment becomes the primary mechanism for addressing presidential misconduct. Green and other impeachment advocates are explicitly making this argument now. They're saying the Supreme Court took away the criminal prosecution option, so Congress has to step up and use the constitutional tool that remains available. Impeachment isn't just a political remedy anymore. After the immunity ruling, it might be the only remedy for a president who abuses his power while in office. The political dynamics for Republicans are genuinely terrible. When Green forces an impeachment vote, every House Republican has to decide whether to vote yes or no. A yes vote means supporting impeachment of a president who still commands enormous loyalty from the Republican base. That's career suicide for most Republicans. Trump will attack them, his supporters will primary them, and they'll probably lose their seats. But a no vote means going on record saying it's acceptable for a president to suggest lawmakers should be executed. That's a position that moderate voters and suburban swing voters find appalling. Republicans in competitive districts are stuck between a base that will punish them for disloyalty to Trump and general election voters who will punish them for defending death threats against Congress. There's no good option. Trump's rhetoric has created a lose-lose situation for his own party, and Green is making sure they can't avoid confronting it. Some Republicans have tried to downplay Trump's comments with the usual boys will be boys excuses. You know how President Trump is. Don't take it literally. He's just being provocative. But those excuses sound increasingly hollow when the specific thing Trump said was that lawmakers deserve death. How do you say don't take it literally about execution rhetoric? How do you explain to constituents that the president didn't really mean it when he suggested their representatives should be killed? The usual Trump defense strategies don't work as well when the underlying conduct is this extreme. And Green is betting that forcing a vote will expose how indefensible Trump's position really is, even if Republicans still vote to protect him. The arguments they have to make in his defense will damage them politically. The historical context for all of this matters too. We've had presidents who clashed with Congress before. We've had presidents who use harsh rhetoric about political opponents. But we've never had a president who publicly suggested members of Congress should be executed for disagreeing with him. That's unprecedented in American history. And Green is arguing that unprecedented misconduct demands an impeachment response, that if Congress doesn't act when a president threatens legislators with death, then there's effectively no limit on presidential behavior. The president could say anything, threaten anyone, and Congress would just shrug and say that's not enough for impeachment. At some point, Green argues, you have to draw a line, and publicly calling for the execution of your legislative critics is that line. Okay, let's break this down into clear points so you understand exactly what's happening and why it matters so much. Point number one, Representative Al Green has announced he's filing new articles of impeachment as a privileged resolution, forcing the House to vote before Christmas on whether to impeach Trump for his death penalty rhetoric against members of Congress. This isn't a symbolic gesture that can be ignored. A privileged resolution requires the House to take up the matter and vote. Republican leadership can't just bury it in committee. Every member of Congress will have to go on record about whether they think a president can suggest lawmakers deserve execution and keep his job. Green has explicitly connected this impeachment push to Trump's Truth Social posts accusing Democrats of sedition, punishable by death. Those posts are the evidence. Trump's own words are the basis for impeachment, and Green is forcing a vote while those words are still fresh in everyone's minds. Point number two, the impeachment articles accuse Trump of a pattern of authoritarian behavior that culminates in threats of violence against the legislative branch. Previous articles filed by Green, H-Res 353 and H.Res 415, already accused Trump of authoritarian rule, violating due process, denigrating judges, ignoring Supreme Court orders, and endangering separation of powers. These articles argue Trump will remain a threat to democracy and the Constitution if allowed to remain in office. The new push adds the death penalty rhetoric as the most extreme example yet of Trump treating other branches of government as enemies to be destroyed rather than co-equal institutions to be respected. The impeachment narrative is comprehensive: court defiance, judge attacks, constitutional violations, and now explicit threats against Congress. Each element reinforces the others to build a picture of a president who believes he's above all constraints. Point number three, the Supreme Court's immunity ruling makes impeachment more important than ever because criminal prosecution for official acts is now largely off the table. When the Supreme Court gave presidents broad immunity from prosecution for official conduct, critics warned it would make presidential accountability much harder. You can't easily prosecute Trump criminally for things he does as president. That leaves impeachment as the primary constitutional tool for addressing presidential misconduct while a president is still in office. Green and his allies are explicitly making this argument. The Supreme Court took away one accountability mechanism, so Congress has to use the one that remains. If Congress won't impeach a president who threatens lawmakers with death, then there's effectively no accountability for presidential behavior at all. The immunity ruling raised the stakes for every impeachment decision because it's now the only game in town. Point number four, Republicans face an impossible political situation where voting against impeachment means defending death threats against Congress, while voting for impeachment means betraying Trump's base. When Green forces this vote, every Republican has to pick a side. There's no hiding, no dodging, no letting the issue quietly disappear. A no vote on impeachment means going on record saying Trump's execution rhetoric is acceptable. That's a position moderate voters and suburban swing constituents find appalling. But a yes vote on impeachment means crossing Trump and facing his wrath, primary challenges, and attacks from the base. Republicans in competitive districts are trapped between two terrible options: either alienate the general election voters they need or alienate the primary voters they need. Trump's rhetoric has created this mess for his own party, and Green is making sure they can't escape the consequences. Point number five, Trump is reportedly in a rage spiral over this impeachment threat, attacking Democrats and calling it another witch hunt, but he can't deny his own words because the posts are public and undeniable. The usual Trump defense playbook, claiming fake news, denying he said what he said, attacking the credibility of accusers, doesn't work as well when the evidence is Trump's own social media post that everyone can read. He did suggest lawmakers committed sedition punishable by death. Those are his words. That's not disputed. The only question is whether those words justify impeachment. And Trump can rage all he wants about persecution and witch hunts, but he can't make the evidence disappear. His own statements are being used against him, and there's no one to blame but himself for creating this crisis. Now, let's talk about what happens next, because this is moving fast and the consequences could be historic. The House will have to vote on Green's privilege resolution before Christmas. That vote will likely fail because Republicans have the majority and will probably move to table or dismiss the articles rather than proceed with impeachment. But the vote still matters. Every member goes on record. Every Republican who votes to protect Trump is documented as defending death threats against Congress, and that record follows them into the 2026 elections, where they'll have to answer to voters about why they thought execution rhetoric was acceptable. Green understands this. He's not necessarily trying to remove Trump from office. He's trying to create accountability and force Republicans to own their support for increasingly extreme presidential behavior. Trump's behavior going forward is the big wild card. If Congress votes down impeachment again, does Trump interpret that as permission to escalate further? Does he see surviving another impeachment vote as proof he can say anything without consequences? Based on his pattern throughout his political career, the answer is probably yes. Every time Trump crosses a line and faces no consequences, he pushes further next time. Every time Republicans defend his behavior, he takes that as license to be even more extreme. So voting down this impeachment might not end the crisis. It might just set the stage for Trump to say something even worse, forcing another confrontation that's even more dangerous than this one. For Democrats, this impeachment push serves multiple purposes, even if it doesn't result in removal. It keeps Trump's death penalty rhetoric in the news. It forces Republicans to take indefensible positions. It creates campaign material for 2026, showing Republicans protecting a president who threatened Congress. And it establishes a record for history, showing that at least some members of Congress tried to hold Trump accountable for his most extreme behavior. Green has been filing impeachment articles, knowing they won't pass, but understanding that the effort itself has value for the historical record, for political accountability, and for keeping pressure on Trump, even when he has enough Republican allies to survive. Here's the bottom line. Trump is in a rage after Congress delivered a fresh impeachment threat directly tied to his insane comments suggesting lawmakers deserve death. Representative Al Green is filing new articles as a privilege resolution, forcing a House vote before Christmas on whether execution rhetoric against Congress is impeachable. Previous articles already accused Trump of authoritarian rule, court defiance, and constitutional violations. This new push adds death threats as the culmination of that pattern. Republicans face an impossible choice between defending death threats or crossing Trump's base. The Supreme Court's immunity ruling makes impeachment more critical because it's now the only real accountability mechanism for presidential misconduct. In Trump's own words are the evidence. His posts suggesting lawmakers committed sedition, punishable by death, are public and undeniable. So stay tuned, because we're in a countdown to impeachment, according to Al Green, and the House will vote on this before members go home for the holidays. Will Republicans actually defend a president who suggested executing his critics? Will they find some procedural way to avoid taking a clear position? Will Trump's rage spiral lead him to say something even worse before the vote happens? These are the questions that will dominate the next few weeks as this constitutional confrontation unfolds. This is what happens when a president pushes past every limit and threatens the very institution that's supposed to check his power. Congress is responding with the constitutional tool available to them. Whether it works or not, the country is watching. And history will remember who stood where when the President of the United States suggested lawmakers should die for opposing him. That's where we are now. That's the crisis we're living through. And it's about to come to a vote before Christmas. Pay attention, because this matters more than almost anything else happening right now. The future of presidential accountability is on the line.